Scrum accountability and the rights of the product owner. Now, as we've mentioned in other discussions about the different accountabilities, I'm going to describe what I would consider some reasonable rights of the product owner. But please understand that the product owner does not inherently have these rights. You cannot assume that they can execute on these rights. You need to get the organization's management's approval to agree that the product owner has these rights. The first right, the product owner has the right to order the product backlog. Now, that might seem obvious. Of course, we know that's one of the things that the product owner does. They put the product backlog in order. Why would we call that out as one of their rights? Well, because unfortunately, there are some situations where the product owner does not have the right to order the product backlog. Other people or some other person, usually above them, sets the standard about what the order will be for the product backlog. And that's a shame because in those situations, oftentimes what happens is the product owner becomes more of a taskmaster, just delivering the news about the order of importance. They're getting their marching orders from someone else. The true product owner that has independent authority has the right to say, based on my understanding, based on my analysis of return on investment, based on my discussions with stakeholders, based on my knowledge of strategic direction of the organization, market conditions, the abilities of my team, etc. This is the appropriate order for our product backlog. Second, the product owner has the right to decide when an increment is ready to be turned over to the customer. Now, you will often hear terms like shippable, is the product increment shippable? Is it releasable? You'll hear those terms. I understand those terms, but I prefer to express that type of activity more in the sense of turning work over, putting it into the customer's hands or the user's hands for them to engage with, for them to maybe even deploy, put into their production environment. But sometimes, depending on the product, particularly if you're in the physical realm, the customer is not ready to actually put that increment into their working environment, but they can still experience it, validate it, verify it. There's some delineation within the organization when we move the work that we've been engaged in over to the customer. The product owner has the right to decide when is the right time to do that. And they're not just considering, is the increment done? They're also considering the relationship with the client, the user, what their needs are, what their timing represents, their schedules. So it's more than just, hey, the increment is done, let's turn it over. No, there's other considerations, and the product owner has the right, understanding all those considerations, to decide when is the right time to do that. Third, the product owner has a great opportunity that carries a lot of weight and a lot of potential pain. They have the right to stop the development work. Now, they don't do this alone. They use input from many different sources. They're evaluating market conditions. They're understanding where the organization is at that particular time, financial considerations. And there are times when it just does not make sense to continue the development activity. Now, that could happen in one of two general ways. One way that would happen is right in the middle of the sprint. The product owner realizes we are wasting our time. We're spinning our wheels. There's no point in continuing the sprint. Right there in the middle of the sprint, the product owner could decide, stop, stop. Let's stop what we're doing, fall back, have a short retrospective to discuss what happened here, how did we get in this situation, and then help the team decide what do we do with the rest of the time we have in this sprint. Another scenario where the product owner might decide to stop development has to do with ceasing work on the overall product goal. And that can happen for a couple of different reasons. So one possible reason is we've achieved the goal before the expected overall delivery date. You have a product goal where we expected it would take, let's say, 4 months, for example, but after 3 months, we've delivered 80 to 90% of the goal's value, and the product owner realizes the remaining 10 to 20%, it's not worth the additional cost to execute. So let's stop now, take our win, move on to the next important goal. The other scenario where this might happen is, let's say we're working on that same 4 month goal delivery cycle, and there's some market change. There's some regulatory announcement. There's some shift that takes place that causes us to realize there's no point in finishing this. Maybe you've just acquired a company that already has what you're trying to build. Product owner could decide, why are we going to spend more time building something? We're going to have this ability very shortly once this deal is complete. Now, other people will have a strong influence in that third right about deciding to stop development. I find this one particularly interesting because in more traditional environments, if someone like a project manager, let's say, announced that they think it would be best that we stop the work, or if they are told we're going to stop the work, oftentimes that's viewed as a negative, as a bad thing, as a failure. Not in an agile environment. In an agile environment, we look at it as a great way to preserve the time, energy, resources, funds of our teams so they can always be working on the most valuable thing. And sometimes canceling early is a great victory because we achieved our goal ahead of plan. Thanks for your time.